Welcome to the Escape into Board Games podcast.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Matt.
And this is our escape from the real world where we talk about board games.
In this episode, we talk about games that have interesting and unique mechanisms,
as well as a segment about sleeving your games.
So please join us for the Escape into Board Games podcast. Games can often be broken down into their component mechanisms. We might say games like blackjack and roulette are press your luck, while rummy, go fish, and ticket to ride contain set collection. Euchre, wizard, and spades are trick-taking games, and Monopoly has auctions, player elimination, and roll and move.
In 2008, when Donald X. Vaccarino's Dominion was released, nobody had ever heard of deck building before. It was loosely modeled after making Magic the Gathering decks, but players use in-game currency to purchase cards that make their personal decks better at competing at a particular task. The deck building game quickly became a genre all its own.
Now, we're not claiming to have discovered the next great genre of board gaming, and these games are not the only games that contain these mechanisms. However, we think they are implemented in new and interesting ways.
So I'm really happy with my list here. I have to say that my list of games are probably some of my most favorite games that I like to introduce to new gamers. Mm-hmm. I feel that they seem very new and fresh to people who are outside of the hobby, who don't play as many games as maybe you and I do. And it's a great way to kind of show off a little bit of what modern board gaming is like, as compared to, those sort of mass market classic board games that we all grew up with, like Risk and Trouble and Monopoly.
Exactly. Games do that now. You can do that with games, right?
Yeah. Every
time you introduce one of these games to somebody, they're like, they do that? It's not just rolling a dice and moving your thing around the board. We're now...
Yeah. So that's what my list is about. Are you...
I'm always fascinated by how games work, and I'm mentally breaking them down into their mechanisms when I play them. And these ones stand out for being uncategorizable. Mm. They fit into certain spots, but they've just got that one thing that I don't have anything else in my collection that matches it.
And it turns them into that word that we're using, which is unique. And these games are not unique in the sense that, I have a drawing game in my list. Pictionary is one of the more popular games that everybody knows. So drawing is the mechanism. That's not what is unique about it. It's what the game does with drawing and in the way it makes you feel and the experience you have while playing it. That makes it unique. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's what unique means in this case.
Nice. Wavelength. Wavelength is a team-based, targeted clues party game for 2 to 12 players ages 14 and up that plays in about 40 minutes. Designed by Alex Haig, Justin Vickers, and Wolfgang Warsch, and published by Palm Court. Wavelength is a beautifully produced game whose one main component is a large gauge that gets propped up inside the box insert. Think of it like a gas gauge. There's a little red needle that you can turn, and you can set this gauge to any position, like totally full or 3/4 or whatever. Behind this needle is a small target area, and this target area can move. It's randomized at the start of a player's turn, so that on your turn, your team gives you this giant gauge and randomizes the target, and then gives you a card. The card has two extremes on it. For example, it could say guilty pleasure on one side and openly love on the other. Or talented on one side and untalented on the other. So let's say, for example, my card says ugly word on the left and beautiful word on the right. And I open the shield on the gauge to reveal where my target is, somewhere between completely empty and completely full. Only I know where the target is. And my clue needs to communicate that to my team. So let's say My example word is kitchen. Chris, where on the dial would I put the needle? Straight up the middle? Would you suggest kitchen is just as ugly as beautiful? Or anything higher than 50% would be more beautiful and less uglier? Or would it be in 50? What would be your guess? Kitchen. Give me a number between 1 and 100.
I'm going to go 70 because I think modern kitchens are neat and tidy and beautiful.
Exactly. So the target was 68.
There we go.
So very good.
We're good at this game.
So you've aced it, right? So the hurdle, of course, is communicating the rules to. So like, wait a minute, that sounds very arbitrary. And yeah, it is. It's very arbitrary. And that's the hurdle that the players have trouble getting over. But
it very much is, yes.
You've played it before, so you immediately knew how to respond to my questions. But that can be a little bit of a trick introducing new players. This game has been broken down thanks to COVID. You can play this online very easily with these percentages. They've made it an online version that's basically an Excel sheet. But the box, the produced version you buy in the store, is just gorgeous. This massive dial sits on the table and it snugly fits into the insert. So the bottom of the box is your base. You sort of pass that around to everybody. And the dial on is big and chunky dial, so you can dial it in.
Well, how big do you think it is? I don't actually own this game. I've played it several times, only once, I think, maybe once or twice. It's an excellent game. I love it, and it's one that I'm considering putting into my collection. But I'd say it's about 8 to 10 inches in diameter, and it just sits there in front of you, and it's like you're doing some sort of a psychological test on the people that are involved. And if you're walking by, you can't help but to stop and just say, hey, what is that they are doing, and look at it.
It acts like not a gateway, but almost a lure, a bait for new players to bring them to the table. It's eye-catching, and everybody wants to know how it works.
Yeah, it's definitely eye-catching. I don't think it's necessarily the prettiest looking game. Like, you're not looking at it and going, oh, that's beautiful. What is that? You're looking at it and going, what is that? Like, it's colorful and it's got nice art, but it's more eye-catching. Like, what are they doing? I need to know.
The box has got all these rainbow lines on it, and it's an optical illusion sort of thing. Very vibrant.
The concept is really, really simple and really, really neat. It's definitely one of the better party games out there. Definitely one that I'm going to be thinking about adding to my collection. Jungle Smart. Jungle Smart is a real-time simultaneous puzzle game for 1 to 10 players, and it plays in about 20 minutes. Suggested ages are 8 and up. Jungle Smart was designed by Dominic Earhart and published in 2002. My copy was published by Foxmine, but I know it's also been published by GameWorks. 3 wooden animals stand on 2 platforms at the start of your game, so that at least one or more will be on top of another. Players are racing to figure out the best way to reconfigure the animals to match the current card and a new orientation of the 3 animals using those 2 platforms. The catch for this game is once you've found the series of commands that will make the animals move in the right order, you have to give those commands verbally using only words like ma, ni, ki, or so. These words relate to actions that move the animals around. Those commands can be something like swapping the top 2 animals or moving an animal from the bottom of the stack to the top of the same stack. Once you've figured out what you're going to do and you've figured out your pre-programmed commands, you shout out your list. And it might sound like, lo ni ma so. And if you've found the correct actions to make the animal stack up properly, you win the card as a point. The player with the most points wins. So, first of all, I know that some people won't like this game because of the theme of having animals performing for us in a circus. I definitely can understand that, and honestly, a real circus has that effect on me. But this game, I think...
It's pretty abstracted.
There's
no ringleader, there's no popcorn.
There's no whips, there's nothing, there's nothing terrible that hurts the animals.
Yeah, there's nothing like it. It's in a jungle, right? The board is...
Well, actually, the game has actually been released as Crazy Circus. So My version is called Jungle Smart, but it's also been released as Crazy Circus, Maniki, and other names as well. So I think it does take place in a circus. Thankfully, though, the animals, which is a lion, an elephant, and a polar bear, are these big wooden caricatures. So that sort of takes you away from what is actually happening thematically in the game. And I think, if it is an issue, I think it's an opportunity to use the game as an opportunity to talk about circuses and what that means. As for the game itself, it's definitely not for everyone. Like, for example, my wife, Sherry, she hates this game. She says, my brain just does not work that way, and I can't figure out the puzzle, and it takes the fun away from me. So I asked her, I said, does that mean like you don't like it because you don't win? And she was like, no, it's just painful for me.
It's nice to have a game to beat Sherry at, though.
It is nice. Yes, I will bring it out just for that.
I like the game first. It's fun. It's a fun game that makes you think differently.
Yes.
And silly things are happening at the table, but being able to beat Sherry at it is the icing on that cake.
That's hilarious. I think actually what you said is perfect. I think I really enjoy games that mess around with your brain a little bit and it makes you think in a different way or in a unique way. And, this game, while quite simple, it's essentially just a race and a puzzle and you have to find the solution before your opponents. It does it in a way because you have to use these other language commands. It does it in a way that sort of messes with your brain, like games like Ghost Blitz, Jungle Speed is one of them. A new one that I just played called Rainbow Rabbits. They sort of mess with that part of your brain that processes information. And I'm sure this is not correct, but I've always thought of it as sort of a left brain, right brain kind of thinking, is it uses both sides of your brain. That's probably not neurologically correct at all, but that's the way it feels in my head.
Anomia is another good example of that, where you're doing the pattern recognition simultaneously trying to think of names of stuff.
Yes, and Stroop, that, it'll say the color red, but it's in yellow, so...
Yes.
Yeah, you have to think of that.
Twist in your brain. Love those.
So this game is a lot like that. It is essentially, though, a simple game. It's just a race and a puzzle, and you have to find the solution before your opponents. What makes it different is translating those commands that make the animals move to the position that you want in this other language. It creates a whole new level of brain cramp fun. I guess the other part of that is because it does sort of challenge your brain and your thoughts a little bit, there is the potential for a new player to feel dumb, like, oh, I don't get this. I'm not able to figure it out. And when you're teaching new players games, that's sometimes, depending on the player, a no-no. You don't want people to feel dumb or less than because they can't, figure out the process and do well at a game. But for me, and what it does, I do like it. I like pulling it out with new people because people go, this hurts my head. I hate this game.
I've never thought this way before.
Yeah. And it's really short and you put it away. But always there's somebody at the table who does very, very well. And it's like, they're one of those people that can do it I'm not saying I am, but yeah. Anyway, that's Jungle Smart.
Concept. Concept is a team-based, limited communication, deduction party game from designers Gaëtan Bogenot and Elaine Rivellette for 4 to 12 players, published by Repos Productions. Concept is basically the game of charades, but instead of acting out the clues, you use a board that's covered with emojis and icons. On your turn as the clue giver, you take a handful of colored cubes and markers and place them over the various icons and emojis. There's a cheat sheet that can tell you what each icon might represent. For example, one might be film and another might be fictional characters, but there's sections on the board for colors and shapes. So let's say, for example, Chris, that I take the main token and I put it on person, and I put another token on fictional, and then more tokens on television broadcast series, youth, and the colors yellow, brown, and the shape square. What might my clue be?
That's a really good clue. I'm going to go with SpongeBob SquarePants.
Very good.
Yeah, you are much better at this game than me.
So you've got familiarity where we're communicating ideas to each other with these limited clues. But the clues are these icons, these tokens on the board, and they can mean lots of different things. There's two icons right next to each other. One is a baby crawling, and the other one is an old man with a cane. And you can put your token anywhere on those two spots. But if you put it far to the left, then it's a really young baby. And if you put it in the middle, then it's a middle-aged person. If you put it at the end, then it's an old person. So now you've got different ways you can communicate different ideas using the icons. Or maybe you want to say that the character that you're talking about is a middle-aged character. So you would use a red token on character and then put a red cube on the age. But maybe the television was for a young audience. So you would use a green icon on television and then put a green cube in the same age thing, but then now lower.
Right.
So now you know the green matches the green. Okay, so for the television, it's a young television show, but the character is middle-aged. So you can use the same part of the board for different things by matching up the colors. And of course, not all the clues are SpongeBob or Darth Vader. Sometimes they're the title of songs or expressions that you might say, and it can get really complicated.
This is a game that I didn't really care for. I think that it's one of those games it's much more complicated. And I think the clue giver makes a big difference about how good this game is. And I'm not a very good clue giver for sure. And like the clue that you gave was excellent. Like I had to think about it, but I got it right away. It was spot on.
I find it takes practice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first time we busted this open, the best we could do was Darth Vader or SpongeBob. And then the more times you play it, the more tricks you can come up with. For example, the cubes come in a variety of different colors. And if you wanted to steer your guessers to certain things in a certain order, like if you had a multi-word clue, then you could use the rainbow order. So you'd start with red, and then that would be the first clue, and then you'd get everybody to look at all the orange things, and then you'd get everybody to look at the yellow things, and then you'd get everybody to look at the green things, and then the blue things, and then you can maybe string a sentence together of clues.
Wow.
It takes that limited communication thing, and then you start to build on it. And then you've got these shorthands and tricks that you can rely on, because some of the clues are very difficult, for like flex one's muscle.
Oh, wow.
Sleep like a baby.
Okay.
Throwing gas on a fire.
Wow.
Some of these clues I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Yeah.
The card that you get has easy things at the top and hard things at the bottom. And you want to challenge yourself and try to communicate the hardest thing just to get, quote unquote, the most points. And I say quote unquote because even in the rule books, it says, you can keep score, but really nobody does. We came up with a scoring mechanism and then nobody ever used it. We just sort of have fun. It's an activity.
Yeah.
But it can be a really fun one.
Yeah. You know what? You've kind of convinced me. I think it's a game that I need to give another try. It wasn't one that I loved right away. And when I heard it explained to me, I was like, oh, this is going to be great. And then I played it and I was like, oh, I'm really horrible at this game. And I've sucked out all the fun for everyone else at the table too. And I can't wait for it to end. But yeah, I think I would like to try that again.
Take some practice.
Yeah, we'll have to play that together sometime. Kluster. Kluster is a magnetic dexterity game for 1 to 4 players and is suggested for ages 14 and up. It plays in about 10 to 20 minutes and was designed by Paula and Robert Henning. It was published in 2018 by Borderline Editions. In Kluster, players are taking turns placing magnetic stones inside a string enclosure, which usually starts in a square or circle shape. Be the first to place all your stones, and you will win. If any of the magnetic stones clump together in a cluster, you have to take them all back. So try not to make any of the magnets touch. You can only touch your own magnet with your fingers, but you can use the magnetic force of your piece to move other pieces around inside the circle. You can change the shape of the circle by pulling on one of the edges of the string, and you can even use that string to move some of the pieces as long as you only touch the string. Remembering that if the pieces clump together in a cluster, you have to take them all back and your turn ends.
This is very similar to that rattlesnake game we play.
Yeah, I actually own both of these games. I'm not sure which one I like better, but the other one is called Rattlesnake, and that's by Fantasy Flight Games. And that one adds a board, which is pictures of snakes, and you roll the dice, and if it shows a red snake, then you have to put your magnetic piece on the red snake. In this one, the pieces have sort of two flat sides, and then the rest, sort of like a disc, is uneven. It's not a perfectly round disc. It's and all the pieces are slightly different sizes and shapes, and they're really powerful magnets. And there is no requirement about where you put it. So you don't have to put it on the red snake or the yellow snake.
Okay.
So it's a simple dexterity game, but it is fast to learn. It provides a high level of excitement because there's this tension as you take this magnetic piece and you start to put it into the enclosure, the arena, and you see the other magnets sort of, either repel or get attracted to your magnet. And you have to decide, okay, is this a safe spot to put it down, or am I going to move it a little bit to the left or the right without sort of making all the other magnets clink and clank together? Now, one thing is, it says on it that it's suggested for ages 14 and up. And to me, that seems really high and unusual. And the only thing that I can imagine why this might be suggested is, some risk of a choking hazard or some sort of legal reasons. So I feel like it's very important for me to say this would be very, very bad for your health. Don't put the pieces in your mouth. The game is full of warnings not to do that. Do not ever, ever do that.
I'm pretty sure they don't make that rattlesnake game anymore because of that.
Yeah. I was interested to see that Kluster was being produced again and has become available in stores, because I thought that was one of the reasons why Rattlesnake wasn't getting republished, was because it was a risk of injury.
Yeah.
That's an important thing. I wouldn't want anyone to get hurt. And apparently that's a really, really bad thing. It's a very tiny box. You can almost fit it in your pocket. I would say probably a coat pocket, certainly a purse or something like that. So it's one of those games that I would bring to like a bar or a restaurant. You could play it on the table. It wouldn't matter if you spill drinks all over it.
Nice.
It plays really fast. So like if you're waiting for your food to come, you could play probably 2 or 3 games, and none of the components will ever get damaged because they're these thick magnets, these stones. It's a great game. It plays great with kids and with older people.
Nice.
And I like it to pull out with people who are new to the hobby.
It sounds fun, yeah.
There's just something.
You're dealing with the different, right, the north and south poles and where the magnets are and where their poles are facing. So one spot on the board might appear safe, but because of the way the magnetic fields are working, it could be the deadliest spot.
Yeah.
You have to feel that out.
Yeah. That's Kluster.
Treasure Island. Treasure Island is a deduction, exploration, pirate treasure hunting, one versus many game for 2 to 5 players ages 10 and up that plays in about an hour. Designed by Mark Paquin with art by Vincent Dutray. Published by Madigo. In Treasure Island, players are competing to find Long John Silver's treasure first. One player plays Long John Silver and sets the game up by hiding the treasure somewhere on the map. Players take turns traveling across the map, deciphering clues and challenging Long John Silver in a battle of wits. What makes this game unique is the board and the personal player mats use dry erase markers to mark up the map. Players need to use compasses, rulers, and gauges to mark up potential treasure spots. There's a large main map in the center of the table that Long John Silver needs to apply clues to, but also each player has their own player screen and personal map that they can also take notes on. So the hidden movement, the one versus many, these are familiar things that we've seen before. What I like about this game is the drawing on the map. You take the big compass and you put the dry erase marker in the compass and the suction cup in the spot, and you do a big arc and a big circle on the map, and the treasure has to be within this, circle or outside of this circle. On Long John Silver's turn, throughout the game, he will have to divulge a piece of information after each turn, each round. He's narrowing down where the treasure could be. He's got a series of cards in his hand. And he has to choose which one to play that will reveal information. They're trying to reveal as little as possible. At first, playing the Long John Silver character is more like a dungeon master. He's sort of setting up the challenge for everybody, who can solve the riddle the fastest. Mm-hmm. But as that player gets more and more experience, it's possible for them to win. It's not easy for Long John Silver to win. It's mostly a race for the other players, but it's still very interesting and challenging. And I almost did it once. I almost beat you guys.
So remind me again. So when you're drawing on the map, and it is, I think you're right, it's unique in the way that it does this. You're drawing like on the board, like literally on the board, circles. And I think you were sort of eliminating where the treasure is not, so that you're making the board smaller, or at least where the treasure could be is potentially smaller.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different clues. Maybe it's, within so many miles of the volcano, or maybe it's within so many miles of the shore.
Right.
Because it is an island, and there's, lots of different nooks and crannies. The very, very detailed map. It's really beautiful. And what's interesting is on the flip side of the board is the same map, but more of a sepia, so that you can better see the markers that you've put down. Where players travel, they leave, right? So every player has a different colored marker, and where they go on the map is drawn, and where they've been is a line.
Right.
And maybe one of the cards that Long John Silver has to play later on in the game is somebody walked within 3 miles of the treasure. And so now you get to, where did everybody go? Where's everybody been?
Right.
It's really interesting the way that they've implemented those mechanisms with the ability of mark it up. It all just comes right off. It doesn't permanently mark up the board at all. Completely dry erase. All the surfaces are that whiteboard material, but with these beautiful Vincent Dutray artwork on it as well. Each player has different player powers. It's also asymmetrical. Everybody's got like some little bonus that'll help them throughout the game.
Right.
I'm a huge fan of deduction games. And this is pretty. It's a pretty game. It's deduction.
It is very beautiful.
It's got all the things I love.
Yeah, it is a very beautiful game. The artwork is astounding. And like the components, like I remember like the ruler and the compass that you use to draw lines or circles and eliminate where the treasure is or isn't. Those components are quite fantastic.
They're not just like plastic shapes. They've got beautiful, ornate little designs on them to make them thematic.
Yeah, functional. Functional art.
Really great.
Yeah.
So that's Treasure Island. We're going to get back to the show after a brief message. This next ad is for Chris's own company, Geeky Goodies. If you'd like to hear what an ad for your game, product, or website might sound like, drop us a line at escapeintoboardgames@gmail.com. When we escape into board games, we're always wearing our Geeky Goodies t-shirts.
They are great conversation starters for gamers and non-gamers.
But did you know that they also sell masks, socks, hoodies, game room posters, mugs, and so much more?
All things board games.
All things geeky.
Visit geekygoodies.com and use coupon code ESCAPE for a 10% discount off your purchase. Mord Arosa. Mord Arosa is a murder mystery game that uses listening as its key mechanism. 2 to 6 players can play this in about 30 to 40 minutes, with the suggested ages being 10 and up. Published in 2010 by Zoc Verlag, Mord Arosa was designed by Alessandro Zucchini. Mord Arosa is a game that is set up by stacking a series of boxes on top of each other. Each box is slightly smaller than the other below it, so that when you are done, what you have looks like a hotel tower in the middle of the table. The other key element to understanding how the game works is that each box has a small hole in the top and no bottom, so that when it's fully assembled, the hotel has an empty shaft from the top all the way down to the bottom at the table. Down the shaft is a small shelf that represents each floor of the hotel room. At the start of the game, you throw in 2 red cubes that represent the 2 murder victims in the game. Players take turns throwing clues in the form of little wooden cubes into the shaft of the hotel tower. Basically, the more cubes you have in the tower, then it becomes more and more likely that evidence that incriminates you in the murder will be discovered. Listen carefully, and you can guess which floors these clues will come to rest. On their turn, players may either accuse other players or cover their own tracks. Making an accusation involves naming a floor of the hotel and indicating which players' cubes they think are there. If you're correct, your cubes are used to incriminate that player, and if you are incorrect, you'll have to add more cubes to the tower. The player who has left clues closest to the vicinity of the scene of the crime is the most suspicious and will be found guilty of the murder, but whoever attracts the least amount of suspicion will win. So, Matt, this is a murder mystery game that uses sound in a way that I've never seen before.
Agreed. Yeah. Essentially, you're trying to figure out where the cubes are by listening to how many floors it hits on the way down.
Yeah.
But it's not going to hit every floor on the way down.
Yeah.
And so then you're judging, well, you're looking at this tower, it's about what,
10 inches or so off the ground.
And you're trying to, well, I heard it about 3 inches off the top, and then I heard it again. I'm horrible at this game.
It is a tough game. What happens is when you drop those cubes into the shaft of the tower, they make this wonderful sort of trickling sound as it hits the different ledges as it goes down. And you try to count them. It's like 1, 2, 3, stopped. Okay, so that means it's 3 floors or maybe 4 floors from the top. But what can happen too is your cube can hit a cube at the top and knock something all the way down to the bottom. And actually that makes its own sound. When a cube makes its way all the way down to the bottom floor, it actually hits the table and it makes this,
and you can tell,
different noise that's more like a clunk.
Yeah.
And everyone goes, oh, now I know where that cube is. But again, is it the cube that you just put in, or is it something else? Memory is a big part of the game, especially if you're playing with, more than a few players. If you play with 5 or 6 players, memory is a very important part because it's going to be several turns and several cubes before you get to play again. Also, the cubes themselves are constantly being pulled out of a floor and then pushed back into the cube, and new cubes are being added. So what is on what floors and what colors are on what floors is always being changed. So you have to remember where you think things are at the current time. One of the things I love most about this game is there's no downtime. Like everyone's turn is full of very, very quiet, tense listening until that sort of wonderful trickling noise ends with the cube stopping where it is. And then everyone goes, I know. And then when it's your turn, you probably don't really know.
And it's all bluffing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I have no idea where it is. Just pretend I do.
One of the downsides of the game, I think, is you need a fairly quiet room. Like it's not one that you can play, have loud noise playing in the background.
It is not convention hall friendly.
No, I was just going to say it's one that's difficult to play at a convention. We actually did, and I would say it didn't work great, but we actually gave it a try and we got points for effort.
Yeah.
But it's not a convention kind of
Not
game.
an ideal situation.
Yeah, it's your living room.
Nice.
Mord in Arosa, I believe, means murder in Arosa, and Arosa is the name of the hotel in the game.
The Mind. The Mind is a limited communication cooperative card game for 2 to 4 players ages 8 and up that takes about 20 to 30 minutes. Designed by Wolfgang Warsch and published by Pandasaurus Games. The Mind consists of 100 cards numbered 1 to 100. There are a few other cards for keeping track of score and bonuses. On the first turn, each player is given a single card, and then play begins. Then, players silently play their cards from lowest to highest. If a player plays a card out of order, we lose a life. If you play all your cards, then we move on to the next level where everyone gets an additional card. The challenge is to try to make it to level 10 before running out of lives. This is another game from Wolfgang Warsch. We've heard his name a few times today. And he also designed Illusion, which would have been on this list if we hadn't previously talked about it during our Family Games episode. This guy, I mean, how has this not been invented already? How is this 2000, and I think it was 19 this came out. How is this game new? It is so incredibly simple, and yet we've never seen it before. Everyone's sitting around the table with a card in their hand, and we're all like, well, are you going to go or am I going to go? It's a really odd feeling. It's a very unique kind of game. And of course, it's a limited communication. You're not supposed to talk, but there are ways to communicate. I mean, you do develop ways to communicate. If I've got 95 in my hand,
right,
I know I'm not going to play that first. I'm going to put the card face down on the table. I'm going to lean back.
Yeah.
I'm going to cross my arms. Maybe look at my phone. I'm going to tell everybody I have no intention of playing this card now.
Yeah.
Go ahead and lay down your 15 or whatever you have, because it's definitely not in the first. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You come up with these little shorthands. Yeah.
And as the number gets closer, you want to kind of give people a clue. Okay, I'm not quite ready, but I am. So you might look up from your phone and, dramatically lean in, look at the current number, and then kind of go, lean back and go, nah, I'm not ready to play. I mean, of course you can't say that. You have to say it with body language and your hands. The other thing I've seen done is a person will hold the card face down, inching it towards the middle of the table, indicating like,
we're getting close to my number, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's one of those games that I think when I heard it explained to me, I was like, this does not sound like it's going to work.
How is it going to work?
Yeah, this is not going to work. This is not going to be fun. It's going to fall apart. And every time I've played it, I've been amazed at how it does work. And you can communicate in some really interesting ways. We stick pretty strongly to the no table talk, but there's a lot of laughing as sort of, you can't hold it in. It's like, oh, are they getting my message? Okay, I'm going to just giggle. And maybe that's kind of cheating the rules a little bit because the giggle is giving away some information. But it's such an interesting game.
The first time I played it, I played a 2-player game with a guy at a board game meetup, and I just met him. I didn't know him at all very well. And we started playing this game, and it clicked. Like we just, I don't know, somehow we figured it out. We made it up to level 8 or something. Because I'd never made it that far in that game before or since. And the feeling was like it was a Ouija board kind of feeling. Like there's a hidden hand coming in and guiding us to play the card. And when you're like, I've got a 97. There's no way I'm going to play this before he plays his last card. There's no way. But he's communicating, right? We're like, wait a minute. He has no intention of playing his card either. Maybe it's a...
yeah.
Okay. I mean, there are 3 other cards in the deck that he could have out of 100. That's like, what are the odds?
Yeah.
But maybe I'm going to wait a little bit more. Okay. No, his arms are still crossed. My arms are okay. And then I play, after a long wait of silence, just sitting there.
Yeah.
I play my 97. They play their 98. Boom. We just won the level. It's just like, what just happened? How did we do that?
Yeah.
Just incredible.
It's a beautiful thing when it comes together too. It's like, what? Like you said, it's just so, it's astounding that it works.
You kind of are counting, like in your first few rounds, you are kind of like, how long have we been sitting here? How long has it been since the 20 went down? When should I be ready to put my 40 down? Is there,
right.
You have to think about, you have to pay attention to what everybody else is doing, how many cards they have, what their hands are doing.
Yeah. And it's that moment of holding back your card that can be so agonizing, but fun in this game. It's like, do I hold it back? I'm at, 52. That's about the middle, right? So do I hold it? Okay. Now? No. If I put it now and someone has a 40, what do I do? It's very, very fun. That's a great game. Now the designer, Wolfgang Warsch, he's done I feel like he just keeps hitting it out of the park, right?
Yeah. I've never played a bad game of his.
Yeah. What else has he done?
Yeah, Wolfgang Warsch has done Quacks of Quedlinburg, Ganz schön clever.
Yes.
Wavelength, The Mind, Taverns of Tiefenthal.
Yeah.
He's got a very impressive resume.
Cartooner. Cartooner, the fast and furious game of drawing comics, is a game that combines storytelling and drawing. It plays with 1 to 8 players, ages 12 and up. The game says that it takes about 20 minutes to play, but I think that all of our games have gone more than double that. Cartooner is designed by Jason Thompson and was published in 2018 by Japanime Games. In Cartooner, your goal is to create a several-page cartoon or comic and get the most fame points using a combination of your theme cards and the market trends that change each round. The game is played over 4 rounds. Each round takes about 5 minutes. But before the game begins, each player draws theme cards that determine what your comic will be about. Trend cards provide players with new ways to score fame points each round. These represent the market and the desires of your readers. Your comic readers may want you to add romance or superheroes or zombies to your original storyline. You have to decide if you want to stick to your original vision or add in these market trends for more points. Scoring is judged by other players. You get 1 fame point for each of the themes that you expressed on the pages of your comic. You get 2 fame points for using the entire page and drawing something in every panel. And you get 2 fame points for keeping your comic succinct and using only 3 or less talk balloons per page. So you're focusing on the art of the game. Each round starts with a new page of your comic and more panels for you to fill up with your artwork and story. That way, the tension and the speed element of the game builds with each round. In the end, the player with the most fame point wins, but every player walks away with a comic of their own creation. Even though this game is called Cartooner, it's really more, I think, an emphasis on the narrative in the game. Have you played this game, Matt?
Yes, once.
Yeah? Okay.
But I played it with good artists, and it was challenging and hard.
Yes.
With them as my opponents.
I would say I'm not normally a fan of storytelling games. I love the idea of a storytelling game, but like Gloom, for example, it didn't work for me. The idea of storytelling, for me to truly enjoy it, I feel like I need time where I can think about it, a time alone where I'm preparing where the story is going to unfold, and not do that in real time, live in front of other people.
Yeah, the speed element. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm an artist. I need to tell my story in private first and perfect it.
Get it just right.
Yeah, exactly. Get it just right. However, the silly nature of this game, Cartooner, and the way the theme and the trend cards come into play and really dramatically change the way your original storyline, your original vision goes, that makes this game just really approachable for me personally. I don't think it's a game for everyone. It is definitely challenging. It's definitely can be intimidating for new players to play with a new group. And, you're basically drawing and showing everyone your art. And if you're not a good artist, then that, even if you are, that can be intimidating.
Yeah. Yeah, it can make you feel self-conscious.
Yeah. But again, the game isn't so much about how you draw. Most people, myself included, use stick figures to create their comics. The fun of the game is the twists and turns that you decided to put into your story. And of course, the taking time in between rounds to explain and update the progress of your story and have everyone judge, oh, yes, you did manage to include the rabbits in your story about politics, or how the superhero works into your story about an orphanage, that kind of thing. Cartooner also becomes a great exercise in creativity. I think it helps train your brain a little bit and to look for new ways to incorporate different elements into your original vision. And I don't know that I've actually played a game that does that the way this does. There's lots of drawing games that make you, interpret other people's artwork,
yeah,
or symbolize an idea and draw it out. But this one really sort of forces you to, to think differently about where you wanted to go with the story. And there's a time crunch because each round takes 5 minutes. What we found, though, is the game is at least double the length because everyone goes around in between each round explaining their comic. Look at this. Okay, over here is where the main character does this and he does that.
And it's hard to tell, but he's holding a thing and this is supposed to be...
Yeah, exactly. He's got a sword in his hand, so I get the points for that. That's a sword. Yeah, trust me, it's a sword. Or he has 300 eyeballs, and that means I have more eyeballs than anyone else. That kind of thing. And, like it says in the description, you get to keep this comic book at the end. And that's something that I've found has been something I've been surprisingly proud of. It's like when I pull out this game, I like to look at the old comics that we created. Yeah. And, if someone leaves one that they didn't take it home, that's fun to look at too. And I look at my old ones and just remember the fun time we had playing it.
Nice. Yeah.
So that is Cartooner.
Have you played any of the games we've talked about? Or do you have a favorite game with a unique mechanism? Write to us at escapeintoboardgames@gmail.com. To sleeve or not to sleeve?
Sometimes called deck protectors. Essentially, a sleeve is a clear little pocket of plastic that protects the cards in your board games, collectible card games, and even trading cards. Sleeving is the act of putting the cards into these tiny, thin, transparent protective pockets, one at a time.
Sleeving the cards in your game may protect them from normal wear and tear from playing the game over and over, wear and tear from games that require excessive shuffling, the natural oils found in skin and fingers from players, the sticky fingers from players who eat at the table while playing, and minor water spills, but act fast because sleeves have only 3 sealed sides and water can still get in from the top.
Sleeves come in clear, matte, glossy, thick, or thin, colored backs, and even game-themed artwork on the back. They also come in different thicknesses, measured in microns. The higher the micron, the thicker the sleeve is to protect your cards. There are many companies that are creating sleeves for your games, including Mayday Games, Ultra Pro, Sleeve Kings, Dragon Shield, Swan Panasia, and many, many more.
We recommend that you sleeve your cards if
it is a game that requires a lot of shuffling,
the game is out of print, expensive, or difficult to replace,
if you play with people who grip their cards tight until they bend,
marked, bent, or dog-eared cards will affect the enjoyment of your game,
and if the game requires cards that contain hidden information. Games like Love Letter, for example.
Sleeves come in many different sizes, so it's important to buy the right sleeve for your game. There is an excellent online forum on boardgamegeek.com that can help you find the correct sleeve for just about any game.
You can search boardgamegeek.com for the Geek List card sleeve sizes for games. As well, most games on the site have a link to the Geek List section listing the sleeves available for that game. So for myself, I don't sleeve all of my games, not all of them, but I must admit that I do sleeve most of them. I'd say probably about 70% of them are sleeved.
Yeah, you sleeve a lot of your games.
What about yourself?
I'm in the 30% probably. I'm the other end.
Okay.
For sure.
Together we make 100.
Yeah, I sleeve a few of my favorites, and then if there's like 15 cards in the deck, like Love Letter, then that gets sleeved.
I'm pretty paranoid about it. I had an incident very early on with a game that we were playing with some friends, and a glass of juice mixed with coconut rum got spilled all across the downfall of Pompeii. And the board and the tiles got wet. Thankfully, none of the cards got wet. The draw bag got wet. It cleaned up well. Like, I still have the game in my collection. It plays well. It's not sticky. It doesn't smell. There's no mildew.
Oh, wow.
I cleaned it up right away and the game ended, but that's fine. But it taught me this valuable lesson. It's like, okay, if the cards had gotten wet, then it would have been done.
Yeah.
I think. And I said to myself, for a few dollars more, I can protect the games or the parts of the games that I can protect, and they can stay with me longer and I can enjoy them for longer. Yeah. But that was one of those lucky incidents, and it was pretty early in our board gaming, so I learned a good lesson.
You're scarred for life.
Scarred for life. Yes, I was definitely scarred for life. I do sleeve all of my deck building games. If I have a deck building game, I do feel compelled to sleeve them. There's just so much shuffling, and the corners can get dog-eared, and some of the art turns white on the edges, and then you can tell what card's coming up. And
that's a lot of sleeves, though, Chris. What does that do?
They're the ones that have the most cards, right?
It's insane. I can't imagine sleeving, Legendary.
You don't sleeve Legendary?
No.
What?
No, I didn't sleeve Hogwarts deck building either.
What?
No, there's way too many cards. There are way too many cards.
Yeah, it's like $60 investment just to sleeve.
Marvel Champions. I did not sleeve Marvel Champions.
Wow.
Yeah. I think the game with the most cards that I've sleeved is maybe Spyfall, and then Root.
Root. Oh, okay. Yeah, I just have to do it. I enjoy sleeving games so much that I've actually sleeved other people's games for them. I've had friends bring over their copies of Legendary and other deck building games and their sleeves, and I'll just do it while I'm sitting there watching a movie or listening to music. That's how much I like doing it. And it's not even a few friends. It's more than a few friends have done this.
I know a guy who can sleeve for me.
Yeah, I know a guy that'll sleeve your... I know a guy that will sleeve your cards. That's awesome. Also, only buy premium sleeves. I find the thinner sleeves, they just don't protect the card the way I want them to.
Yeah.
And my personal preference point is probably the cheapest sleeve that I like is the Mayday sleeves, Mayday Games. They make a good premium sleeve that has a lower price point, I find. I think Fantasy Flight makes an excellent sleeve as well, and I'll buy them when I can't find Mayday.
I sleeved Fugitive with penny sleeves or whatever, the standard.
The cheap ones.
Not premium ones.
And how did that go?
It was horrible. It was really hard to shuffle. At the very next game, they were sleeved with premium.
Yeah.
Did not last long at all. It was a big mistake.
Yeah, very early I bought a bunch of those thinner sleeves, and I think I sleeved Pandemic or something like that. And we didn't play it for a few months, and I pulled it out, and they were all clumped together and sticking together, and it was just like...
Oh, no.
It was like, what happened?
Why even? Yeah.
Were we eating something when we played this game last? Like, why is everything sticky? It just wasn't good, so they got re-sleeved. And now it's only premium sleeves. Now, I do have a fun fact. I have even sleeved the paper money that comes with one of the games that I own. I think I'm going to leave that one to your imagination. You feel free to send in your guesses about which game has paper money that I sleeved and send it to escapeintoboardgames@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening to the Escape Into Board Games podcast. Be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Escape Into Board Games.
This episode is produced by Matt McKenzie and Chris Cormier. Production assistance by Sherry Cormier. Music by John Yasut and Daniel Carlton. See you at the next Escape.